and welcome to Ideaspark. My name is Priya Hunt. I'm an executive coach whose mission is to inspire leaders like you to thrive and create a bigger impact. And to do that, today I have a wonderful panel, Sandeep, Steve, welcome, to talk about continuous professional development and how is it important for us as leaders to continually invest in our own personal development. So without much ado, let me get the panel to introduce themselves. Sandeep, welcome. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about you?
Yeah, hi Priya. I'm Sandeep. I'm the Group Chief Executive Officer at SGS Group. SGS Group is the largest private sector conglomerate in Bangladesh in healthcare and education. And we are a big group of companies. We run various hospitals and educational institutions which are ranked at the top of the ranking list in Bangladesh. So being the head of a conglomerate, it's important to have various skills because you don't get to deal with just one type of a company. There are different types of companies that you have to lead. So a traditional learning, for example, I did my bachelor's in commerce from University of Delhi, then master's in commerce from University of Delhi. I realized that, if I have to go into management, I needed an MBA. So I went to the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta, finished my MBA and moved ahead. I did my first part of my cost accounts because I had to have an idea about some in-depth idea about financial understanding too. Then, once you get into work, it's tough to get into learning mode, but you realize it. As you climb up the ladder, you realize that. So later on, I went and undertook a course in global trends from the Wharton School from 2015 to 2016. Then further on, I did a PhD in mergers and acquisitions from University of Buckingham in UK. Again, this is not a part of a general hobby. It was all a part of understanding how to run these global businesses and a robust grounding in scholarly literature or academic inputs is I believe necessary to have a full-fledged understanding of how an industry functions or how corporations functions. So this is my general story. I mean, I have 20 plus years experience across the subcontinent in consulting firms, in project management, and in running conglomerates. So there it is. That's my introduction. Thank you.
And can we let everybody in on a little secret that you and I actually studied together years and years ago?
That's right. That's right. We studied in school and Delhi Tamil Educational Association. That is a fantastic school which produced two stellar individuals, me and Priya, right? So no, it's wonderful to know you since the past so many years. Thank you, Priya.
Thank you, Sandeep. And Steve, we are studying together now. So tell us a bit about you.
Indeed, yes. So we've got the pleasure of being on the MSc in Coaching and Behavioural Change at Henley Business School. And both of us are coming towards the end of our second year and thinking about dissertations coming up. So interesting times. It's been a fun programme to be involved with. And the reason I'm on that course is that I'm in what I think people now call the portfolio phase of one's career. So I left full-time employment. I was head of executive education at Henley Business School until about a year or so ago. And I'm now running my own business involved with leadership development programs, working for a range of business schools, doing my own coaching work and consulting work with clients, which is a fun phase of my career. I think people, when they shift into that kind of freelance world, there's probably a nervousness, and I think I would admit to that as well. But it's actually been a real pleasure. I've got in touch with people that I'd lost contact with, who I'd seen met in my various roles in the past. So it's been a time to kind of reconnect. And I thought I would miss being part of a team, but actually my team now is kind of dispersed and I'm part of different teams. So that's been a real learning experience and a fun time for me, which will continue hopefully for another few years. Although my mum does think I've retired. So she'll always ring me up every day asking me to change light bulbs and things, but that's certainly not the case, not yet anyway. So my career, I mean, the topic today actually is all about continuous personal or professional development, and I think my career might illustrate that to some extent. I started life as a mechanical engineer. I did a degree at Brunel University in mechanical engineering. I was working in the motor industry, and then from there progressed into a number of other roles, getting perhaps a little bit more managerial rather than purely technical. A bit like Sandeep, I thought I need to do an MBA so that I can improve my leadership sort of expertise. At least that's what the thought I had in my mind. It turned out to be somewhat more academic, perhaps, than in terms of developing my leadership skills. I'm sure that's something else we can talk a little bit later on about. What is learning? Is it about academic knowledge, or is it about something else? Anyway, the MBA, I found it very interesting, and I was working in the defence industry at that point and thought the defence industry in the UK then was going through difficult times. I could see the writing on the wall. So I thought, I want to change my career direction. I'm really enjoying this kind of learning stuff. So I asked the professor who was teaching strategy, how do I make that shift? And he said, well, I've been asked to teach a diploma in management studies. Would you like to have a go? So with no experience, I had to teach this module, which I enjoyed doing. And then my career progressed. I went into further education and then ultimately started lecturing in universities in the UK. Spent a while, as you might say, as a traditional faculty person running postgraduate and undergraduate programs. Eventually got a bit bored with that. I never quite figured out how to do the marking. I always found marking a complete bane of my life. So I then thought, well, is there something else I could be doing? And at the time I got contacted by a friend who was at London Business School, who said, we're looking for someone to come to be a program director for one of our leadership programs. So non-accredited, didn't have a degree associated with it, a 4-week general management program. So I spent then 7 years at London Business School in what people would call executive education, running programs, doing some business development. From there, I went to Oxford Said Business School, where I was director of custom programs, so designing and delivering executive leadership programs. And from there to Henley, where I spent 7 years or so. Looking back at my career, I seem to have spent around about 7 years at each place. And they do talk about the 7-year itch, so maybe my career illustrates that. So I've gone from a technical background through to managerial, and then into, I suppose, academia, and then into the branch of academia, which arguably is about practical development of leaders. So yeah, hopefully that gives you some idea of how a career can develop without any particular planning.
I think that's fascinating, and thank you for that, and welcome again, Steve. It's also very refreshing to hear from both of you that you've been consistently investing in your own self and your own development as well. So Sandeep, let me start with you and ask you as to, is it important for us as leaders to think about our own personal and professional development, and why is it important?
You know, as a person who's gone through a PhD, to dispassionately answer the question, perhaps you should ask the question, why is it not important? There are many CEOs globally, I know of them, who perhaps don't believe in personal or professional development because their personal command over their topic is supreme. They are geniuses, if I may say. They read every day. They don't consider that personal development, but their brain, you know, assesses their environment and develops mechanisms, operating procedures, which they're comfortable with. So the question is personal development not important? If we look at it that way, perhaps the answer would be clearer. Now, the group of CEOs that I would talk about, or leaders that I would talk about, is a minority. They are outliers, right? These geniuses are not, you know, a dime a dozen. They are the rarity in the world. There are, but the majority of us are the workers who've come up the ladder, you know, strived hard to understand at every level how to succeed. Our personal objectives have become, have coincided with professional objectives, with the organization's objectives. And finally, this whole concept of capitalism driving our ambitions with respect to job, family, remuneration, everything falls into place. Once we know that, how do I go up the ladder? How do I proceed ahead? And proceeding ahead, if I have to develop a business, I find out, I mean, there's a very simplistic model in marketing. It's the Ansoff matrix, right? If you want to grow a business, you either continue selling your current products to current customers, or you sell new products to your current customers, or you sell your current products to new customers, or you sell new products to new customers. I mean, it's very simplistic, but that's the answer. So if you want to continue selling your current products to your current customers, your business growth is going to be average, if not the same. And the only way you can organically or inorganically think of growing fast is if you expand your outlook. Either you change your market, or you change your products, or you change both. So if you replicate that in a personal life, so if I have to grow fast, if my ambition is to expand my scope, my span of control, my remuneration, my personal achievement, then I need to have something new. Either I join new companies, or I develop my skills. Now there's this these surveys of CEOs that happen about how many companies they have jumped before they became CEOs. So J.W. Stewart had a wonderful survey of the Fortune 100 CEOs. How many companies have they jumped before they became a CEO? So 98% of the CEOs had jumped only 2 companies at the maximum before they became the CEOs.
Wow.
And this is Fortune 100. So you're looking at, in leadership, especially of large companies, these companies motivate and plan the growth of good employees, and they don't want to let go of them. And vice versa, good employees who work in good companies would want to be leaders in the same companies. So in the Ansoff matrix, replicating it on this level, jumping into new companies is not something that a model CEO would do. Maximum 2, 3, 4. In your life, if you're jumping 5, 6, 7 companies, you're just looking at random growth. But if you're sticking to the same companies, if you're putting your eggs in the same basket, then the way to go is to develop your skills, competence, and to ensure that the company that you're planning to be for 20 years, you give it respect, and you ensure that your improving skills contributes to the company's improving business growth. And that's the combination of personal, professional, and organizational objectives. So as a prudent CEO who worked for 20 years in one company after my MBA, and this is my 4th year in my second company, and as a CEO who understands commitment, I would say that for me, personal and professional development is not just for me, it is for my organization. I cannot be less committed to my organization, and I cannot say that I will not develop because I don't need it. That's a wrong view. If I'm committed to the organization, then I have to develop myself personally and professionally so that the organization's business growth can grow into new markets, into new customers, and it expands. That's the concept of capitalism. Of course, there are social organizations which have no such objective. That's absolutely okay. But I'm not in such an organization. And if I'm looking at continuous growth for my business, then I need continuous growth for me. And that's probably the most compelling reason that as a CEO, I'm committed to personal and professional development. There you go.
Thank you. No, that's very, very profound. And it's very interesting on how you combine the organizational growth in the same picture. And I think that makes total sense to me. Steve, coming to you, you've obviously worked, leading executive education in so many different organizations. And you must have noticed why some people are actually quite successful in this space, while others aren't, in terms of students and studying and learning later on in life. What have you noticed about people who actually do really well in growing personally all through their lives, rather than only when they're studying early on in their, life and so on? What have you noticed about them?
Well, I think at the heart of it's being curious. And it's wanting to find out about new things. And actually, I think it's essential for all of us. I think it's certainly essential for chief execs, but for all of us. I mean, the environment is changing so rapidly. I came across a piece of work recently by a British academic and consultant called Reg Revens, and he had a view that learning has to be greater than or equal to the rate of change. So that's the rate of change in the environment. It could be in a business or actually one's own personal rate of change. So learning is absolutely important as the environment changes. And as Sandeep was suggesting there, organizations need to change, and therefore the people in the organizations, for that change to occur, have to be learning. They almost need to be one step ahead and seeing what's going to be happening in the future, and then re-engineering their organizations. So to do that, asking questions, I came across another phrase recently which I really liked, was hosting curiosity conversations. So I think this comes from the literature in adaptive leadership. And the idea is that there's a number of people to help them learn about new things and to find out different perspectives. They deliberately spend time with people who have quite a different perspective for them. So you might be, a chief exec in your 50s, but you might say, I want to spend time with a social media star. I want to find out how they see the world. So it's a case of asking questions, finding people to talk to. And yes, of course, there is formal education. But in my experience, the people who are the ones who are really developing personally take what they need from, if you like, from the academic world, and then combine that, query it, find other people to talk with. So they're going through this ongoing personal development, which they can then feed into their organizations. And people who are able to do that, it can almost be infectious. Others want to be part of that. So I think it's having that enthusiasm and being involved with organizations, activities, products, which you're also personally interested in. And I think, excuse me, for the younger generation, they're going to join organizations where they feel they will have the opportunities to develop, and where their values and perspectives on the world are reflected in that organization. And I heard what you said earlier, Sandeep, about the need to commit to organizations in the long term, and I fully agree with that and accept that. I think for the younger generation now, though, what they'll say is, I will commit as far as that organization reflects my values and gives me the development opportunities that I'm looking for.
And you're spot on. And there is, and again, coming back to the Ansoff matrix that Sandeep, you talked about, our customer base is changing. A lot of it is the younger generation now. So it's really important for us to understand what their values are and how their mind works and what they're interested in, which again, you can only do by learning. Sandeep, I have been, I think Steve knows this. I've been debating a PhD myself later on in life, and a lot of people are horrified when they say, "Oh my God, you're going to do that now." I'd love to hear from you on, what did you find challenging, and what did you find exciting about doing, something like a doctorate later on in life?
Right. The world keeps changing, and the financial world, the world of statistics keeps changing, and the research. I mean, as a corporate professional, I'm not an academician, so I cannot come up to speed with scholarly research, which is good, which means a lot to us. Because in this world of conglomerates, we buy, we sell companies, we invest. And for us, every CEO would know our primary objective is maximizing shareholders' wealth, however capitalist it looks. But that is it. Everything else is, of course, there. We are consistently adhering to global environment and social action plans. We are a majority investment owned by Bill and Melinda Gates, IFC, Texas Pacific Group, Evercare Fund. We are a multinational out here, and at the same time, for us, if we are going into a world of change where we are buying and selling companies, valuation is very important.
Yeah.
And if valuation is important, traditional models of valuation about what price do I pay to buy a company, what price do I ask when I sell one of my companies? This is a question that of course, your investment bankers will help you with, but a CEO who has no idea of that will not even have an understanding of which companies to approach to expand their equity profile. So one of the key drivers for any CEO is, either they can do a smallish course in investment banking or structured finance and understand robust models that are consistent in today's world. Or if you are eccentric, then you do a PhD, where you go deep into the world of, into the world of research, and you develop your own concept, and you disprove what you believe should be the way companies should be valued, and that drives learning. So for me, when I entered this group, one of their key focuses was getting equity into the company, global equity. And once with my PhD, that helped me significantly in understanding that this is Bangladesh, right? What is Bangladesh? Giving you a background, since the past 6 years, it has been amongst the top 10 fastest growing economies globally. Since the past 3 years, New York Stock Exchange has ranked it in the top 5 fastest growing economies globally consistently. Since last year, it has a per capita income which is higher than India's per capita income. And but there are many growth dynamics that the Bangladesh success story has. 167 million population, 1.5 million children passing out every year, 99.6% primary enrollment rate. These are not simple figures. So human lifestyle indices are growing up. Income indices are growing up. So for us as a company, we want to bring global brands into Bangladesh. And so that was the reason that I decided to undertake a PhD, which made me, a PhD brings you face to face with global investment giants. It's a better way to get to know the heads of global investment firms and private equity giants than just be a business associate. They're more open to understanding what my research is, more open to understanding my focus. So there's a personal objective and also a professional objective. And that helped, of course, that helped. So just giving a theory, a concept, a few years ago, nobody would have gone through, let's say, prospect theory. Prospect theory was developed in the 2000s by Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman of Princeton University, where in summary, their theory, Nobel Prize winning theory, said that all investors are fools. They make irrational decisions. And how do you identify the point where that irrationality starts? If you are able to mathematically grab that, then you can mathematically maximize the amount of investment you can get into your company by playing on the rationality. Now, a traditional CEO would just go by the value that his company projects. But if you can grab onto that irrationality, a Nobel Prize winning theory, then you can ensure that your group gets the largest ever investment in the history of Bangladesh, foreign investment that has ever come into these sectors. And that's what I managed. So this is the whole point. Just doing a smallish course is okay, but the moment you do a PhD, you are thrown into the world of literature review, which is not just about believing investment is good, but believing investment is bad, and looking at investment from all perspectives and developing your own perspective, which can work for your own organization. So that was the driving force for my PhD, and I think that I succeeded significantly.
Well done. I mean, it absolutely, and it's very compelling when you put it that way. And Steve, let me come back to you on this. Some organizations, like I work in the NHS now, and for clinical people, it's absolutely part of their life and their DNA to continuously invest in their development. Do you absolutely have to? And I come from the airline industry, where again you had to recertify, if you're a pilot or crew, for various very good security reasons. But for the rest of us, people who are not in those kind of industries where CPD is part of your DNA, what do you advise? How can people, besides that curiosity which you talked about, how can people just make sure that they are doing something towards themselves?
I think the concept of CPD that's put forward by professional bodies is really important. So some of the industries you've mentioned there, I mean, very much so. I would be pleased that if I'm going to a doctor, I want to know that they're absolutely at the cutting edge. They understand the latest diagnoses or whatever it might be. And if it's the airline industry, I want to know the pilot really knows everything about the airplane that she's flying and the latest developments and keeping up to date with the technology. So I think there's certain professions where it's absolutely intrinsic in the role that somebody has, because that's what you're expected to do as a professional. Other professions, you could argue, perhaps that's not quite so essential. And I think I get concerned sometimes when CPD is just seen as a kind of a box ticking exercise.
Yeah.
So if you're, I don't know, a procurement professional or an HR professional, someone's not going to die, or the airplane's not going to crash or whatever if you haven't done your CPD. So the professional bodies are right to encourage it. But I do worry that sometimes people just think, well, I've got to do, I don't know, 100 hours of CPD. So I'll listen to a few webinars. I'll sit there doing my emails, and I've now done my CPD. For me, that's not really what it's about. And it comes back to this, well, again, the curiosity and the desire to want to improve. Really, that should be at the heart of professional practice. And of course, one can improve professional practice through webinars and things like that if you're engaged. But also, I think what's really important is to take on that new knowledge and then apply it. So my view on learning is that it's really the application of knowledge that really makes the difference. And that's really what I think professionals should be about. That CPD should not just be that collection of digital badges, you've done all the courses. The question I want to ask people is, to what extent has that really improved your practice? And how has it helped you in your career? Also helping you to think about, the next step that you might take in your career. So I think, yeah, a tick box, definitely, it needs to be there, but it should be more than a tick box in terms of how somebody then uses that learning. And just touching on the point of a doctorate, a PhD, I've had a career in higher education. I didn't actually get around to doing a doctorate. I had a different route, which is partly why I got into executive education. Maybe at some point I might do a doctorate. But again, I think there has to be an enthusiasm, and particularly because a doctorate is a deep dive, as Sandeep was describing, it needs to be something that one has a real personal interest in and a passion. I think if it's just to go through the process of ending up so that you can be called a doctor, I don't think that's good enough. And actually what will happen then is the report that gets produced will just sit on a shelf somewhere. I think the real value of a doctorate is genuinely adding to the body of knowledge that then that's carried on. It shouldn't just be in order to improve one's academic credentials.
And I think that's really powerful. And hearing both of you, it's fascinating how you're talking about the curiosity and openness, but also using that learning in life, because there's no point in collecting degrees so they sit on the shelf somewhere. It's more about what you do with it. As we sort of come to the end of this conversation, the one thing I'm really interested is some practical tips for our audience about what have you both used in your life to continuously motivate yourself, because it's not easy, right? I mean, none of the things that you've talked about so eloquently is easy. It's really hard to do studying later on in life, hard to be a CEO, hard to be in executive education. But how do you motivate yourself? I mean, Sandeep, I'm fascinated by how we can see your motivation just shining through. How do you keep motivated like this? What do you do? Practical tips.
All right, I would like to credit my wife if she's going to see this. So at least I'll get some brownie points. But no, really, motivation comes from various areas in your environment. One is your openness to learning. which should not be eccentric. I would not recommend people to do a PhD. I would rather recommend that people should go ahead and check out the significantly value-based programs on edX, Coursera, if they are not able to physically go for classes. And you have some of the world's leading universities offering courses, which are so interesting. I'll give you a personal anecdote of how, external motivation affects. So I was at this UN conference in Denmark, and my partner was the editor of Boston Globe. So you get partnered with, a few people through the conference. And so he told me that, you worked so long in India, why don't you do a course which exposes you to global trends? And he said, Wharton has a good course. I said, why do I need it? I'm doing, so many things. So he said, how much do you understand global culture? I said, I've read all about it. So he said, good, and he asked me, so where are you actually from? I said, I'm from New Delhi. He said, okay, where is that? So I said, New Delhi is in India. It's the capital of India. So he said, New Delhi. So I said, you've never heard of Delhi? He said, oh, Delhi, that's wonderful, I've heard of Delhi. I didn't know it was New Delhi. So I asked, Jim, where are you from? He said, York. I said, where is York? He said, New York. And so the concept that he brought in was, he said that, look, culture, background, perspectives affect us in ways that you can't recognize. And these courses have examples, research that you will not have time to go through. There are academicians who are consolidating these courses for focused learning, and they know what a course's lesson outcome is, what a learning objective is. Research well, do it, it'll help you in good stead. And that's what motivated me to go ahead and do a course in global trends for business and society. Now, I was open to it. If a person is not open to it, they won't do it, right? One final anecdote, my nephew is Karthik, and my sister, at that time he was in school, my sister was in the US, she called me and said, Sandeep, Karthik has his math tables exams tomorrow, can you get his tables revised from 2 to 20? He'll fail. Karthik was in a lower class. So I called Karthik, I said, come in, he was playing outside, and he came in very grudgingly. And he said, what's it, uncle? So I said, sit down, we are going to revise the tables. Absolutely, he was irritated. So I said, let's start, from 2. He said, 2 to 11 is below my dignity. We'll start from 12. So I said, sure, go ahead. And 12, 13, 14, 15, went till 19 without a glitch. And I said, I'm impressed. So he said, Mama, in Hindi, uncle is called Mama, right? So he said, Mama, I know you're talking about tables. I know tables till 99. I know squares till 99. I said, what are you talking about? So he says, hit me. So I said, okay, what is 98 into 98? He says, 9604. So I said, how did you answer that? You are no genius. And I know you since long. You're an absolute mischievous kid who abhors studies. So he said, Mama, we do Vedic maths in school. And that's a different way of learning math tables. And 98 into 98, our teacher has taught, if it's the table of 90s, you first write 9 and 0. And if it is 8 8s are 64, you just write 6 and 4. 6 between 9 and 0 and 4 after 9 and 0. So he asked me, Mama, so what is 97 into 97? 9409. What is 99 into 99? 9801.
Wow.
What I realized is that there are processes that people are improving day in and day out. And it'll be foolish to be closed to understanding these processes, which can make a genius out of an ordinary person. And
Wow.
just for the sake of it, what is 21 into 21? The opposite of 21 is 12. So 12 12s are 144. So 21 21s are 441. Similarly, 31 into 31. If you have 13 into 13 as 169, 31 into 31 is 961. I mean, all that I'm saying is, It's something that you have to be open to. Believe in the fact that people are better than you, and they've come up with brilliant processes, brilliant learning. And all you need to be is to be open to listening to them. Learning will happen automatically. And that's how fantastic these areas are. And that's my motivation.
Fabulous. Oh, well, gosh, I think that's an interesting way of learning the maths tables. Steve, how about what is your practical tip for us to stay motivated when we are learning?
I think it's seeing the bigger picture, which I think was sort of what Sandeep was suggesting there. Where, I mean, the bigger picture can be to improve oneself, but actually maybe an even more motivating bigger picture is, how can I be learning something that's going to solve the problems that are around us in the world? And I mentioned right at the beginning that learning has to be greater than equal to the rate of change. Well, if you think about the change that's going on in the world now, we've got ongoing pandemics, we've got climate change, we've got a whole series of social issues, some of which are related to climate change. There's a lot of problems, challenges, but also opportunities out there. And I think certainly for me as an individual, and for a lot of the people I work with, the real motivation to learn comes when they can see how that learning is going to change something, improve the world for somebody else. So I would always say, have that in the back of your mind when you're thinking about learning something. How can this be useful beyond just simply the knowledge that I have about something?
And you know, that sort of really resonates with me, because Peter Hawkins, who was one of our professors in the MSc, he asked a question which has stayed with me forever, I think. He said, what can you uniquely do that the world of tomorrow needs? And it's a question I've been pondering about quite a bit. What each one of us, what can we uniquely do that the world of tomorrow needs? And frankly, the world only has all of us. So, you know, it's sort of our accountability as well to continue contributing, isn't it, in some ways? Sandeep, Steve, that's been a really privilege to talk to both of you. It's been really motivating, and I'm sure our audience will get a lot out of this as well. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It has been a pleasure. Steve, thank you. Priya.